initially. And actually, if you go back to the 70s, many Muslims were part of this movement, largely because of what were very unfair language policies on the part of Sri Lankan governments. But two things changed this. One is in the 80s, we actually had a better policy when Tamil was made an official language. But secondly, there were other reasons why the Muslims and Tamils split partly because of the excessive nationalism of the LTT. Because they turned what some people had described as Tamil speaking to a Tamil homeland, which left no space for the Muslims. And so the Muslims who had in any case not been as strongly nationalistic, because don't forget there were other reasons such as colonization, allegations, standardization of education, which particularly affected Jaffna. By the late 80s, they had no reason to want separatism. Although, of course, we still have to make sure that the language concerns are addressed better. Let me just give you one anecdote which I found very interesting. In 2008, I was asked to go to a meeting in Norway, which was of a Tamil sort of national movement, but the government also participated. And after all the usual discussions, some of the Muslims talked about the LTT expulsion of the Tamils, or the LTT expulsion of the Muslims from the north. And I was quite pleased that all the Sri Lankan Tamils there agreed that that had been wrong. The LTT people there said it was wrong and our leader has apologized, which I don't think he quite did, but still. The non-LT Tamils were furious in saying this is typical of the LTT, they are a racist bunch that were negative about the Muslims. The only person who defeated the LTT action was Mr. Vaiko from South India. And we sort of realized that in the end people react according to their own agendas. So Mr. Vaiko had a Tamil nationalist agenda that was not anything to do with Tamil speaking or the problems. Whereas all Sri Lankan Tamils realized that what the LTT had done to the Muslims was wrong. And I think that's a very interesting, let's say, glimpse of the different motivations that make people assert differences from each other. Whereas my own idea is that ultimately we may have differences, but the most important thing about all of us is that we're human. And I hope that all of us here are Sri Lankan.
Thank you very much, all of you. I must declare this session closed. With those words from Rajiv Vijayasinghe, we bring this to a conclusion. Let me thank all the four eminent speakers, Dr. Sunil Chayantha Navaratna, Professor J. B. Disanayake, Professor Rajiv Vijayasinghe, Professor Sudath Ranasinghe, and then of course Professor Koggalage from the KDU for assisting me in this task. I must also thank the audience for keeping to time and trying to manage this, although we started maybe about 45 minutes later than we were scheduled to do. It was a very interesting plenary session on management, social sciences, humanities and education. This is not a subject that can be dealt with in this kind of time period. I think to do justice to a subject like this, particularly in the context of reconciliation that is taking place now, post-conflict, you might need maybe 1 or 2 days, because education itself is a subject for a great in-depth discussion. Then that is probably the need of the hour. Nation building will rest upon how well we will deliver education, whether it is in Colombo or whether it is in a faraway school. But I must just assure you that the government of Sri Lanka, although there is a kind of movement going around to say that, well, allocate 6% of the GDP to education, one must take into consideration that the governments, successive governments, since 1948, have done a great deal to bring free education to this level. If one goes back to the 30th of May 1944, the Legislative Council address by Dr. C.W.W. Kannangara, who is the father of free education in Sri Lanka, you will see his articulation of what free education is all about. And the kinds of things that he had said in 1944 is still valid today if one were to read it. And I think this is where we need to now look at what did he mean by free education. Today the governments are going beyond their call to provide uniforms, that was never asked for, to provide free textbooks, even that was never asked for. All what they wanted was, please don't charge for the tuition or maybe the instructor instructing by a teacher in a school. That is what Sri Lankans needed. And that was very well delivered. But I think now today governments have gone beyond. You give a free midday meal, nutrition is taken care of, uniforms are taken care of so that every child feels the same. No child feels kind of inferior because his parents cannot afford better clothes. Everybody is given the same textbook. It is not, so I brought a new one and the other child has a second-hand book of his brother or the sister. That's not the case now. Every child is now being given the opportunity to learn IT, learn global languages. In the education system, many languages are taught. So these are few things that we can be proud about. But I always keep saying that what other countries do, and I think I'm an ardent fan of what India does on the National Knowledge Commission, take the next leap beyond normal education that we are talking about. How do we think of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ahead? Are we thinking of a country to become conversant with space technology or information technology or nanotechnology or whatever that is being developed? So huge thoughts, and that is why I said education would need maybe 1 or 2 days of a seminar organized by the KDU. Well, I must thank the Commandant, Major General Milind Peris, thorough in his work all the time. When armed forces does things, in fact, I have, for your information, the Vice Chancellor, instructions for session chairs have been given to me. So I have carried out all what I've been asked to do. This is meticulous, absolutely meticulous. I don't need to be Secretary to the President to do this. I can walk from maybe the secondary school and do this session probably the same way I did. These are very clear. So once again, thank you so much. My great tribute to the armed forces and the KDU. You have stood up to the call. In fact, it says, sum up the session at the end. And finally says, because we guys sometimes, do what we want, thank speakers and delegates at the end of the session. So, finally, let me thank all the delegates for being such a good audience. We thoroughly enjoyed. It's not only you that you should enjoy, we should also enjoy. After all, we are also participants in this, learning from each other. And I think that's the spirit of the country today, to learn from each other, learn from each community. Reconciliation is bringing together communities. I have this onerous task of ensuring that the LLRC recommendations are implemented. I must take this opportunity to say that this is well on its way, well on its course. We see a time span of 3 years, the latest, things that might need more political thinking, more national level debates. Well, the proposed parliamentary select committee, I believe, will take into consideration a large number of recommendations that need that kind of deliberation at that level, because that will have an impact on the viability of the nation, how strong we are going to be, resilience of this nation. The rest of it, done by lesser models like us, the bureaucracy, I think can be done within the next 1 or 2 years. Already the Ministry of Lands, the Ministry of Defense, of course, always in the forefront. They have done most of their work. They have resolved many issues, or the on-ground issues. And then on education, health, resettlement, livelihood, housing, you name it. And I think any of those have been fairly well dealt with. So with those words and wishing you good night, I would like to also wish you a bright future. And I think the KDU seminar that has taken place over the years is now a recurring annual event. Hope you will be there next year, maybe not the cadets, but I think others who will certainly come back to a seminar like this. Thank you very much.